Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. CARICOM celebrates 50th anniversary of the Treaty of Chaguaramas amid fanfare in Trinidad and Tobago. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday, 3rd July 2023. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. CARICOM celebrates its 50th anniversary in Trinidad and Tobago, where it all began on July 4th. Foreign Affairs Minister Amory Brown says it is an enormous accomplishment. More from TV6's Nicole M. Ramani.
This auspicious occasion has a great historical genesis. The minister explains how it all began.
The 4th of July, 1973, is when the four founding fathers of CARICOM gathered right here in Trinidad and Tobago, hosted by one of them, Dr. Eric Eustace Williams, the first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, at the Chaguaramas Convention Center, to sign the Treaty of Chaguaramas and to bring into existence this regional family of nations that really has stood the test of time.
This year, the CARICOM heads will gather once again for its golden anniversary, hosted by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. Minister Brown says there are several events planned for the celebrations and tribute, which will begin from July 1st. On Monday, July 3rd, the opening ceremony will be held at the Hyatt Hotel.
The morning of the anniversary, which is Tuesday, 4th of July, the heads will go down to Chaguaramas. At the Convention Center, there will be a formal flag-raising ceremony, military tribute, placement of a time capsule with letters they are placing addressed to their successors 50 years down the road. So in 2073, these time capsules will be opened, and whoever, some of them it might be the same, but whoever the prime ministers are at that time, or the heads of government of CARICOM, will receive letters from their predecessors.
Later on the evening, there will be a gala event at Napa. This year's 45th regular meeting of the heads of government will address various issues of importance to the region.
Haiti is near the top of the agenda given the crisis there and some of the actions that we've already taken as a region toward mitigating that crisis. Our climate change, our financing for development, and a focus on the Bridgetown initiative, which has been advanced by Prime Minister Motley, Mia Motley. Follow up on our food security agenda will take place, as well as a continued focus on crime as a public health issue.
He reveals that free movement is also a focal point moving forward.
Full elaboration of a free movement regime, which has come in for some reflection, some criticism, but this applies in Europe, where you're literally free to move, not just for vacation or a family reunion, but also for education, for training, for employment, for application of your skills. And that really helps transform the reality of every citizen and every family within CARICOM.
Among those attending this year's meeting are the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, a delegation from Beijing, China, a delegation from Washington, D.C., South Korea, Canada, and the European Union. Nicole M. Romani, TV6 News.
Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown says some countries in the region have acted in a way to destroy Antigua-based airline Liat. He's also concerned that some CARICOM countries want it all and should temper their ambitions, as he points to insularity in the regional bloc. Prime Minister Brown, who's responsible for services in the CARICOM quasi-cabinet, made the comments during the presentation beamed across CARICOM member states from St. John's on Friday last. ABS's Garfield Burford reports.
Prime Minister Brown says the community is yet to harness the full potential of the regional services sector. That's despite services accounting for the lion's share of economic activity across CARICOM. He points to the need to address regional transportation given the geographic spread of the member states and reaffirms this requires collaboration among the countries of CARICOM.
I am of the view that in order to have sustained regional transportation services, that the governments must take some responsibility to develop a sustained regional or even sub-regional carrier to supplement CAL. This idea that we must depend exclusively on the private entities within the Caribbean, that is not a sustainable model.
However, the Prime Minister says some leaders have not been singing off the same hymn sheet on the issue.
Antigua and Barbuda has been providing aviation services or transportation services to the Caribbean region. And I find it untenable that despite the fact that the treaty calls for, let's say, equitable benefits, that you have some countries within the region trying to not only compete, but to displace Antigua and Barbuda as a provider of transportation services. So instead of cooperating with Antigua and Barbuda to restore Liat, or for that matter, to start a completely new entity, you have countries going outside of the region to facilitate and to establish other private entities in order to literally destroy Liat.
The Prime Minister makes it clear this runs counter to the ethos of regional integration. He didn't name the countries, but it's clear he was referring to some of the more developed countries or MDCs within CARICOM.
You can't have it all. You can't be, for example, the provider of goods to Antigua and Barbuda, in which we probably spend at least $120 million a year buying goods from Caribbean countries. But on the other hand, you want to also decimate our small transportation sector. That is not in keeping with the spirit of the Treaty of Chaguaramas. And I want to call upon my colleagues to kind of, manage the ambition to have everything. You can't have everything.
As he did at the flag-raising ceremony on Tuesday, the Prime Minister has again raised concern about actions of some member states and the community who are undermining the progress of the less developed countries or LDCs. The head of government makes it clear, though, that the Twin Island state remains rooted to the integration project.
I'm just trying to say here that these are some of the issues that undermines integration. And notwithstanding that, Antigua and Barbuda remains absolutely committed because we understand that, ultimately it is this integration movement that will help to improve the lot of our people. We recognize too that generally speaking that we have benefited from functional cooperation. So we're not hitting CARICOM. All I'm saying here, the insularity that I'm seeing developing at this time, I want to say to those individuals who are guilty of undermining the integration process to stand down and allow the integration process to work.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. In Trinidad and Tobago, the police service there is currently undertaking an audit of all arms, ammunition and uniforms issued to officers. This after several incidents of equipment bearing police markings allegedly being found in the possession of criminals. TTT News shares more.
Leader of government business in the Senate, Dr. Amory Brown, said despite such equipment being found at crime scenes, not all were the property of the TTPS. To this end, he said the police commissioner has ordered an audit to be conducted within the police service to see whether any irregularities exist.
It is expected that any discrepancies identified by the audit will be thoroughly investigated and forwarded to the Complaints Division for consideration and appropriate disciplinary action as necessary, Mr. President.
Dr. Brown added that the police service will soon issue specific uniforms for officers.
The Commissioner of Police has further advised that instructions have been given
for the ascribing of all items of uniforms assigned to police officers with their full name and regimental number to facilitate proper identification and tracking of these items in the future. The TTPS also plans to hold discussions with security companies as it relates to the use of uniforms resembling that of the TTPS.
To date, the minister said no irregularities have been identified and added the audit process will be completed in the near future.
A demand from the opposition United Workers' Party in St. Lucia for the government there to respond in a serious and open manner to the allegations of sexual misconduct by senior officers. The opposition during its press conference on Thursday says the allegations ought to be addressed. Joachim Duplessis of HTS News Force has more.
We at the UWP, therefore, we call on this gentleman at the center of these serious allegations that if he has any integrity and if he has the best interests of the police at heart, it is important that he willingly step aside and allow for this matter to be thoroughly investigated.
Flanked by fellow United Workers' Party female supporters, First Deputy Chairperson of the UWP, Fortuna Belrose, on Thursday morning, is calling for urgent attention to be placed on the serious allegations of sexual misconduct within the force. The issue was raised at a recent Police Welfare Association press conference.
We are aware that the victims have endured fear, embarrassment, and victimization. Even more troubling is the alleged threats and intimidation they claim to have received after bravely reporting these incidents. We recognize and applaud their immense courage in their attempts to obtain justice and protection.
Belrose highlights the importance of Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre's role in ensuring that the leadership of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force is unblemished.
When it comes to law and order, one expects that the process of identifying the best officer for the job will be a transparent one that satisfies all established criteria that will result in the most competent candidate being selected, a candidate who also demonstrates high levels of integrity, a person in whom other officers and the public alike can repose great confidence. We therefore ask the Prime Minister, what was the process that was followed in identifying the gentleman to be promoted?
The United Workers' Party is concerned that the allegations against the accused lawman may undermine public trust. The opposition is demanding an independent investigation into the victim's allegations.
If the complaints put forward by the female police officers are not immediately investigated, this will negatively impact the police department, leading to further defiance, demoralization, and decay of the system.
The United Workers' Party has called on Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre to rescind the acting appointments of anyone against whom allegations of sexual misconduct are made. Joachim Duplessis, HTS News Force.
TVJ's Business Day reports Digicel reaches debt deal with bondholders. Javon Keys has more.
To some company news, Digicel's founder, Dennis O'Brien, has struck a deal with majority of the company's bondholders to reduce the telecommunication company's debt. Mr. O'Brien will relinquish his majority stake with holders of Digicel Limited and Digicel International Finance Limited bonds taking approximately 62% of new common equity in the company. They will also have the opportunity to participate in an equity rights offer, which will raise up to $110 million. Now, Dennis O'Brien is set to keep up to a 10% stake in Digicel, rising to a possible 20% once the restructuring is finalized. He will also remain as one of 9 directors of Digicel's new board. O'Brien and bondholders have been working on a debt deal since February. Now, with this agreement, the company's debt will be reduced by about $1.7 billion, and its annual interest expenses will fall by $120 million.
Hubbard's is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start shopping now at hubbardshardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.